Kerry Stratton was one of the finest people I've ever met. I considered him a very close friend, not only a work colleague. It's hard to put into words what Kerry Stratton means to me. He was a lot of fun to work with. Back when I was a producer here at the station, I used to pre-record a lot of Kerry's shows, and they were hours and hours of nothing but laughter and fun and putting things into shows that had no business being in shows, but we got away with it. Kerry was an astounding wit. He was a historian. He was an incredible musician. He was, to put it this way, my son's middle name is Kerry because of Kerry Stratton.
Kerry and I could talk about the business, and we could talk about things that we'd like to do, and he would tell me about his family and how much he loved his kids. And of course I always like to ask men how they meet their wives, how they've met their wives, and he would tell me all this luscious stuff and speak so passionately about his family. And then we would talk about music and the joy. He had real passion about music, and really he was a walking library. He knew so much, more than anybody I know, about all kinds of music, and loved doing it.
Hello, I'm Kerry Stratton, host of The Oasis and Conductor's Choice here at the New Classical FM.
His voice, that amazing voice, which I first got to know when I was a teenager, and I was really getting into classical music, around 14, 15, and I used to listen to the station, which Kerry was a host on at that time as well, and that just incredible, majestic sound that he had introducing all of that music, and then learning that he was a conductor as well. I think maybe that was my first inkling about, having a double career, that you could be a practicing musician and be on the air. And I had no idea that in the end I would be doing that, and that also I would be colleagues with Kerry.
All of our colleagues and our listeners have spoken so much about how much Kerry meant to them as a broadcaster, as a conductor, and as a lover of classical music. But, for a lot of us, Kerry was a friend that we saw every day. And one of the special things that I'll always remember that I had with Kerry was that every summer he was an avid gardener, and he would bring me potatoes and hot peppers that he grew in his garden. And he would be so excited to show me his annual crop and to share some with me, and then to hear how I took it home and made hot sauce out of the peppers and gave the potatoes to my family for dinner. And it was just really special. And beyond being a world-class conductor, he was a terrific guy. And that's the stuff I'm always going to remember about Kerry Stratton.
So first I remember how welcoming and gracious Kerry was when Moses first bought the classical station, and I started working there, and I knew, I would say, less than zero about classical music. And not only did he help out, and I was at some concerts with him, but he made it so interesting that it really made me want to learn more. Not that I have any claims on that now. And the other thing that I want to say about Kerry, aside from being a very, very engaging and charming guy, is the way he has handled this terrible, terrible disease. And he has been living with it as best he can, trying to hang on to the things that he loves doing. And he's been open about the way he feels, but not consumed. And his family is also amazing, his wife Elizabeth, and really just that it's just an example of how to deal with the absolute worst circumstance that life can throw at you.
Well, I'm so sad to have to be doing this. It's so hard to lose a colleague, especially way too early. Kerry and I have been colleagues for more than 20 years, and we passed off shows between each other. It's like passing the baton. Sometimes he would do the midday show, and sometimes I would do it, and same with the Oasis. And then we would fill in for each other as well when either of us was traveling. My favorite time was when I was doing the midday show and Kerry was doing the Oasis. So at the end of my shift, he'd arrive a few minutes before his shift. And he'd always have a book under his arm, the writings of the musician that he was fascinated with at that time. And he'd always have food that was packed for him by Elizabeth. He would say, "Look what my dear girl packed for me." And he'd talk about the roses in his garden that he loved, and he would call them my girls. Kerry and I both loved quotes. So Kerry, here's a quote for you. This is from Così fan tutte, the trio. Suave sia il vento. May the winds be gentle. Bon voyage, Kerry.
I was traveling and out of town when news came that Kerry had slipped away. And so I was unable to join the first wave of reactions, but I was able to listen to how the audience responded to the news and how his fellow workers responded to the news. And it brought two thoughts to mind, which I think Kerry would approve of. And the first is that in saying just how much he meant to them, what the listeners were really saying was how much the station also meant to them, how unique was our service, and how many people, in fact, depended on it for their intimate contact with some of the most beautiful music ever created. The second observation which came to my mind had to do with the story of how Kerry came to be re-employed at this station. It turns out that when I took control of classical, he was not on the payroll, and I inquired as to why. And the reason was that because he was a working musician, because he conducted all over the world, he would require special dispensation from time to time for leaves of absence, and that led him into some tension with the then management. I said nonetheless that we should bring Kerry back because I believed in the idea of the working musician, the person who is out there living the life, meeting the personalities, and can speak to the music from deep personal experience. And it was on that basis that I brought Kerry back, and that Kathleen Kajioka and Gene Stillwell and other people of a similar ilk are employed here at Classical.
I would never look forward to a day upon day just sitting at home. And I'm having to reinvent myself. So for my third act, I still create concerts and I still participate in whatever way I can.
Cuckoos lead bohemian lives. They fail as husbands and as wives.
I have such great respect. He's still my mentor.
It was great to see him. It was devastating, but at the same time, joyful. I mean, he's carrying on with what he loves.
Kerry's larger than life.
I have ALS, but ALS does not have me.